The lighthouse beam swept across the Atlantic like a slow, persistent heartbeat. Olivia Chen stood at the gallery railing, her wool sweater pulled tight against the October wind. 12 years as keeper of the Crescent Bay Light had taught her every mood of the ocean, every trick of the fog. Tonight felt different. The mist rolled in thicker than usual, carrying something she couldn't name. Below, the harbor town slept under a blanket of amber streetlights. Olivia checked her watch. 10:30. Thomas would be grading papers at home, probably wondering why she'd volunteered for the late shift again. They were supposed to finalize wedding invitations this week. 6 months until the ceremony. 6 months until she became Mrs. Thomas Brennan, wife of Crescent Bay's most beloved history teacher. She should feel excited. Instead, she felt like a woman standing at the edge of a cliff, unable to see the bottom. The radio crackled. "Crescent Light, this is Harbor Patrol. We've got a small vessel approaching your position. No identification, no radio response. Can you get eyes on it?" Olivia lifted her binoculars, scanning the soup-thick fog. At first, nothing. Then a shape emerged. A battered inflatable boat, engines sputtering, a single figure hunched at the tiller. The person looked exhausted, soaked through, moving with the mechanical precision of someone running on pure survival instinct. "I see them," she radioed back. "Looks like they're in trouble. I'm going down." She descended the spiral stairs 2 at a time, grabbed the emergency kit, and rushed to the rocky beach below the lighthouse. The boat scraped against the stones. The figure stumbled out, nearly collapsing into the shallow water. Olivia splashed forward. "Hey, are you hurt?" "Let me help!" The man looked up. Her heart stopped. Even through the grime, the overgrown beard, the hollowed cheeks, she knew that face. Those gray-blue eyes that once promised her forever. The scar above his left eyebrow from a childhood bike accident. The way his jaw set when he was trying not to show pain. "James?" The name came out as a whisper, then a choked gasp. "James Halford?" He stared at her like she was a ghost, not the other way around. "Liv." His voice was rough, unused. "You're still here." "You're dead." The words tumbled out without thought. "You died 12 years ago. Your submarine, they said there were no survivors." "I know what they said." He swayed, and she instinctively reached out to steady him. His arm was solid beneath the wet fabric, warm and alive. Not a ghost, not a dream. "How are you?" She couldn't finish. Questions piled up behind her teeth, each one fighting to be first. James's legs buckled. She caught him, barely keeping them both upright. He was heavier than she remembered, more muscular despite looking starved. "Need to sit," he managed. She half carried him up the path to the lighthouse keeper's cottage. Inside, she lowered him onto the old couch, the same one where they'd spent countless evenings planning a future that never came. He'd proposed on that couch. A lifetime ago. Olivia's hands shook as she poured water, found a blanket, moved through motions her training had drilled into her. But her mind was chaos. James Halford, dead for 12 years, now sitting in her living room, dripping seawater onto her grandmother's rug. "I need to call someone," she said. "The Coast Guard, the Navy, the—" "Not yet." His hand shot out, catching her wrist. His grip was gentle but desperate. "Please, Liv, just— Give me 1 hour. Let me explain before the world crashes back in." She should refuse. She should call Thomas. She should alert the authorities. A man presumed dead for over a decade doesn't just wash up without serious questions needing answers. But she nodded. James closed his eyes briefly, relief washing over his features. When he opened them again, she saw something there that terrified her more than his impossible return. Hope. "I thought about you every single day," he said quietly. "Every morning I woke up, every night I tried to sleep. You were the reason I kept breathing." Olivia stepped back, her engagement ring suddenly feeling like a shackle. "James, there's something you need to know." The lighthouse beam swept past the window, illuminating his face in stark intervals. In those flashes of light, she saw the truth. He already knew. Somehow he'd seen the ring, or sensed the change in her, or simply understood that 12 years was too long to expect anyone to wait. "You moved on," he said. "It wasn't a question." "I had to," she whispered. "They told me you were gone." They showed me the reports, the debris, I know. He pulled the blanket tighter. I'm not angry, Liv. I just needed to see you one more time before I figure out how to exist in a world that forgot I was ever in it. Outside, the fog pressed against the windows like a living thing. Somewhere in town, Thomas was probably calling her phone, wondering why she wasn't answering. Somewhere in the distance, 12 years of grief and healing and moving forward hung in the balance. And sitting on her couch, wearing the face of her first love, was a man who'd returned from the dead with eyes full of ghosts. The coffee had gone cold in Olivia's hands. She'd been holding the same mug for 20 minutes, watching James devour the sandwich she'd made, his third. He ate like someone who'd forgotten what full felt like, methodical and focused, savoring every bite as though it might be his last. The mission was classified, James finally said, setting down the empty plate. Still is, technically. But I don't care anymore about protocols. He leaned back, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. We were running intelligence operations in the Arctic corridor, monitoring submarine movements, encrypted communications, standard stuff until it wasn't. Olivia set her mug down, afraid she might drop it. What happened? Our vessel was compromised. Not by enemy action, by our own people. His jaw tightened. There was intel someone didn't want reaching command. 3 of us figured it out. The ship went down that night. Everyone thinks it was a mechanical failure, but the explosion was deliberate. Lieutenant Rodriguez and Chief Petty Officer Kim died in the blast. I made it to an escape pod. The lighthouse beam swept past again, its rhythm suddenly feeling like a countdown to something inevitable. I drifted for 2 days before washing up on Grimsey Station, an abandoned monitoring outpost north of Iceland. No working communications, minimal supplies, but shelter. I thought rescue would come in days, then weeks. Then I stopped counting. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. It took me 8 months to realize no one was looking. I'd been declared dead, and whoever sank that ship made sure the coordinates were wrong. Olivia's throat tightened. 8 months? James, you were gone for 12 years. I survived on Grimsey for 3 years. Taught myself to fish in Arctic waters, rationed emergency supplies, kept myself from going insane by maintaining routines. He met her eyes, and she saw the haunted spaces behind them. A Norwegian research team finally found me. But by then, I wasn't the same person. I spent 2 years in psychiatric evaluation. The government kept me in a classified facility, debriefing, investigating, making sure I wasn't compromised or broken. 2 years in a facility? Olivia felt anger rising, hot and protective. They kept you locked away? For my own safety, they said. And maybe they were right. I wasn't ready to come back. James rubbed his face. After that, I was relocated under a new identity in Alaska. Remote village? No questions asked. The Navy gave me a pension and a gag order. I was a ghost, Liv. Officially dead, unofficially exiled. Then why come back now? Because I couldn't stop wondering. His voice cracked. I needed to know if you were happy. If you'd found someone who could give you the life I promised and never delivered. Before Olivia could respond, headlights swept across the window. A car door slammed. She knew that sound. Thomas's sedan, the way he always closed the door too hard. Liv? Thomas's voice called from outside. Your truck's here, but you're not answering your phone. I got worried. James started to stand, but Olivia held up a hand. Wait here, please. She stepped outside, pulling the door closed behind her. Thomas stood on the gravel path, concern creasing his kind face. At 42, he had the comfortable look of a man who'd found his place in the world. Corduroy jacket, wire-rimmed glasses, graying at the temples in a way that made him look distinguished rather than old. Hey, she said, trying to sound normal. Sorry, I was dealing with something. Something? His eyes searched her face, reading the truth there the way he always could. Thomas was perceptive, one of the things she loved about him. Liv, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost, the word hung between them. Ghost! Thomas, I need to tell you something, and you're going to think I've lost my mind. She took a breath. James is inside. James Halford. He's alive, and he's here. Thomas's expression froze. Several emotions flickered across his face. Disbelief, confusion, and then something else. Something that looked almost like guilt. You need to let me explain, he said quietly. Explain what? He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture she'd seen 100 times. I found out 6 months ago. The Navy contacted me as your emergency contact when they were trying to locate next of kin. They told me James was alive, that he'd be released soon, that he might try to return to Crescent Bay. The world tilted. 6 months? You've known for 6 months? They asked me not to tell you. They said it could be dangerous, that the situation was complicated, that you'd moved on, and that wasn't your decision to make. The words came out sharper than she intended. Thomas, we're supposed to get married. How could you keep this from me? Because I love you. His voice broke. Because I've loved you since the day you walked into my classroom for that history lecture series. Because I watched you grieve for years, watched you slowly come back to life, and I couldn't bear to see you destroyed again by a man who might not even be the person you remembered. Olivia felt tears burning behind her eyes. You should have told me. You're right. I should have. Thomas stepped closer, his voice pleading. But Liv, think about this. You built a life. You healed. This man is a stranger now. 12 years is a lifetime. Whatever you had with him died the day that submarine went down. That's not fair, isn't it? Thomas's tone turned desperate. I know you loved him. I've always known I was second choice. But I also know I've been here. I was here when you couldn't sleep. When every Navy ship in the harbor made you cry. When you finally laughed again for the first time in 3 years. I earned my place in your life, Liv. He just showed up. The truth in his words cut deep because Thomas was right. He had been there. He'd been patient and kind and steady. He'd loved her without conditions, without asking her to forget James, but helping her live beyond the grief. I need time, she said finally. I can't think about weddings or futures right now. There's a man in my cottage who came back from the dead, and I don't even know how to process that. Thomas nodded slowly, defeat settling over his shoulders. I understand, but Liv, whatever you decide, know that I love you. Not the you from 12 years ago, not some imaginary version. You, exactly as you are right now. He walked back to his car, and she watched him drive away, taillights disappearing into the fog. When she returned inside, James was standing at the window, staring out at the dark ocean. I shouldn't have come, he said without turning. I've destroyed everything just by being alive. No, Olivia said firmly. You have every right to exist, James. This isn't your fault. He turned, and in the dim light she saw tears tracking down his weathered cheeks. Then whose fault is it? The Navy's? The people who sank my ship? Time itself? He shook his head. I've been carrying this fantasy for 12 years, Liv. The idea that if I could just get back to you, everything would be okay. But you're not the girl who kissed me goodbye at the harbor, and I'm not the man who promised to come home. So what do? James was quiet for a long moment. We tell the truth. I'm alive, but the James Halford you loved isn't. And you're here, but the Liv I dreamed about every night is gone too. Maybe that's okay. Maybe that's how survival works. You become someone new. Olivia felt something shift inside her chest, a release of pressure she hadn't known she was carrying. I don't know if I can just pick up where we left off. I'm not asking you to. He moved closer, careful, as if approaching something fragile. I'm asking if maybe we can start over. No history, no promises. Just two people who used to know each other figuring out who they are now. Outside, the lighthouse beam continued its eternal rotation, marking time in the darkness. Olivia thought about Thomas's hurt face, about 12 years of carefully rebuilt life, about the girl she'd been who'd loved a young naval officer with her whole heart, and she thought about the woman she was now, standing in front of a survivor who'd endured the unimaginable. Okay, she whispered. We start over. 3 months passed like a slow tide, reshaping everything it touched. James moved into a small rental cottage on the edge of town, the kind of place where tourists stayed in summer and locals forgot about in winter. The Navy had finally acknowledged his existence. There were debriefings, medical examinations, and a formal apology wrapped in legal documents. He received back pay, benefits, and a quiet promise that the people responsible for sinking his ship would face consequences behind closed doors. But none of that mattered as much as the weekly therapy sessions in Portland. The 2-hour drive he made every Tuesday without fail. Olivia hadn't seen him much in those first weeks. She'd needed space, and he'd understood. Thomas had moved out of their shared planning, putting the wedding on indefinite hold, as he'd phrased it with painful politeness. He still taught at the high school, still waved when they passed on Main Street, but something irreplaceable had broken between them. The guilt ate at Olivia some nights. Thomas deserved better than a woman whose heart had been thrown into chaos by a ghost. But staying with him out of obligation would have been worse, a different kind of cruelty. She threw herself into work. The lighthouse needed repairs, and she took them on personally, climbing ladders and scraping paint until her hands ached. Physical exhaustion was easier than emotional turmoil. It was mid-January when James showed up at the lighthouse unannounced, carrying a toolbox. "Heard from Bill at the hardware store you're fixing the gallery rail," he said, standing at the base of the tower. "Thought you could use an extra pair of hands?" Olivia wiped her forehead with the back of her hand. "You don't have to—" "I know." James shifted the toolbox. "But I want to. If that's okay." She studied him. He looked better than he had that first night, cleaner, healthier, the haunted look in his eyes tempered by something steadier. His beard was trimmed, his hair cut. He wore work clothes that actually fit. "Okay," she said finally, "but I'm the boss up there. Lighthouse keeper's rules." A smile ghosted across his face, the first real one she'd seen. "Yes, ma'am." They worked in companionable silence, measuring and cutting, drilling and fastening. James moved with the careful precision of someone relearning how to exist around others. He asked before reaching into her space, announced his movements, gave her room to breathe. "My therapist says I've developed hypervigilance," he said during a water break, both of them sitting on the gallery watching seagulls circle. "I'm too aware of where everyone is, too careful about proximity. It's a survival mechanism from the isolation." "Does it bother you?" Olivia asked. "Being around people again?" "Sometimes. Crowds are hard. Loud noises. Sudden movements." He took a sip of water. "But this is okay. The lighthouse, the ocean, you. It feels not safe exactly, but familiar. Like muscle memory." "I'm not the girl you left behind, James." "I know." He turned to look at her, really look at her. "You're stronger, more independent. You've got this confidence that you didn't have before. Like you know exactly who you are, and you're not apologizing for it. It's incredible to see." Olivia felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I had to figure out how to exist without you. It wasn't a choice. I'm sorry I put you through that. It wasn't your fault." "Maybe not, but I'm still sorry." They sat in silence as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. The moment felt suspended, fragile, like something that could shatter with the wrong word. "I broke up with Thomas," Olivia said quietly. "Officially. 2 weeks ago." James didn't respond immediately. When he did, his voice was careful. "How do you feel about that?" "Sad, relieved, guilty, all of it at once." She picked at the paint on the railing. He deserved someone who could love him without reservations. "I tried, James. I really tried to be that person. But part of me was always waiting." The admission hurt. "Not for you specifically. I thought you were gone. But for something. Some feeling I'd had with you that I never quite found again. And that wasn't fair to Thomas." James was quiet for a long moment. "For what it's worth, I think you made the right choice. Staying with someone out of guilt is a slow poison. Speaking from experience, there was someone in Alaska, Margot. She ran the general store, and she was kind to the broken stranger who showed up in her village. We were together for about a year." He stared at the horizon. "She deserved honesty, and I couldn't give it to her. I was still too tangled up in the past, in you, in who I used to be. It ended badly. I'm sorry. Don't be. It taught me something important. You can't build a future on a foundation of ghosts." He turned to her. "That's why I'm not asking you for anything, Liv. No expectations, no pressure. I just want to know you again, as you are now. If that's all we ever have, I'm okay with that." Olivia felt something loosen in her chest, a knot she'd been carrying since that first night. "What if I'm not okay with just that?" James's breath caught. "What are you saying?" I'm saying, she chose her words carefully. I'm saying I don't know what I feel yet. I'm saying you're not the man I fell in love with 12 years ago, and I'm not the woman who loved him. But maybe that's okay. Maybe we can figure out if these new versions of us fit together. That sounds like hope, James said softly. Terrifying, isn't it? He laughed, a real laugh that crinkled the corners of his eyes. Absolutely terrifying. 6 months later, on a warm July evening, Olivia stood at the lighthouse gallery watching the sunset. James was beside her, but this time there was no awkward distance between them. His arm rested comfortably around her shoulders, and she leaned into his warmth. They'd taken it slow. Coffee dates at the harbor cafe, walks along the beach, long conversations about everything and nothing. He'd told her about the years of isolation, the moments when he'd nearly given up, the small rituals that kept him human. She'd told him about her grief, the way she'd learned to love Thomas, the guilt of not being able to give him everything. They'd been honest in ways they'd never been when they were young and in love, when everything felt urgent and forever was a promise they believed they could keep. I got a job offer, James said, breaking the peaceful silence. Maritime rescue coordination. Based out of Portland, but I'd work from home most days. Good pay, good benefits, and I'd be helping people who are lost at sea. That sounds perfect for you. There's a catch. He turned to face her. I'd need to relocate closer to Portland. The commute from here would be impossible. Olivia's heart sank, then steadied. So you're leaving? I'm asking if you'd come with me. James took her hands, his grip warm and certain. Not because I can't do this alone. I can. But because I want to build something with you. A real life, a shared future. Not picking up where we left off, but starting something completely new. James, before you answer, I need you to know something. His eyes were serious. I'm not the same person you loved. I have nightmares. Some days I can't be around people. I'm still learning how to exist in the world again, and I might be learning for the rest of my life. If you come with me, you're not getting the fantasy of the man who left. You're getting the reality of the man who came back. Olivia felt tears prick her eyes, but they weren't sad tears. And you're not getting the girl who waited. You're getting a woman who learned how to survive losing you, who rebuilt herself from grief, who knows exactly what she wants and isn't afraid to ask for it. What do you want? She pulled him closer, rising on her toes to kiss him, their first real kiss in 12 years. It tasted like salt air and second chances, like new beginnings instead of lost endings. I want to see who we become, she whispered against his lips. Together. No more ghosts. No more ghosts, he agreed. Below them, the harbor lights began to flicker on, one by one, marking the transition from day to night. The lighthouse beam swept overhead, its rhythm unchanged by time or tragedy, or the impossible return of a man the world had forgotten. Olivia had spent 12 years as a keeper of light, guiding ships safely through the darkness. Now it was time to step down from the tower and navigate her own course, with a man who'd found his way back from the edge of the world. They stayed on the gallery until the stars emerged, talking about Portland apartments and career changes and what kind of life they wanted to build. Not the life they'd lost, but something new, something earned through survival and honesty and the courage to hope again. The ocean rolled beneath them, eternal and indifferent, carrying away what was and bringing in what could be. And for the first time in 12 years, Olivia Chen felt truly anchored, not to a place or a past, but to possibility itself.